In Naruto, it gets revealed that the true objective of the antagonist Madara, what this whole series has been building up to, is for him to ensnare the entire planet in a denjutsu known as the Infinite Tsukiyomi, a technique that sends everyone into a dream state where they get everything that they ever wanted in life. With this objective revealed, it introduces a question of who is truly right. Naruto wants to prevent this as it goes against the idea of true freedom and individuality in every person on the planet. But between these two, is there a true answer? This creates a moral dilemma in the viewer. Who is the good guy? The guy who wants to make everyone happy, although in a dream? Or the person who wants true happiness, not one fulfilled by illusions? But it doesn't matter in the end because Kaguya shows up, and it's revealed that the infinite Tsukiyomi is just a way so that people don't fight back their energy getting sapped away by a tree for Kaguya to consume. The same thing occurs in Black Clover. The elves are all killed by humans and found a way to survive through reincarnation magic, planning their revenge against the humans for centuries. But the humans who are suffering this revenge aren't the humans who caused it, as once again, it was centuries ago, but the humans have to fight back to defend themselves. As you can understand both sides of this conflict, is there a true right and wrong side? How can the elves come back and hope to live in peace if the humans might do the same thing again? But is it justified to put the crimes of the ancestor onto the descendant? Well, it doesn't matter, as this conflict was something that was all orchestrated by the devil Zodreed so that he can awaken in the human realm. The humans who killed the elves centuries ago, their emotions were heightened by Zodreed. The hatred that the elves got for the humans to the point of wanting revenge, even more emotions that were heightened by Zodreed. All that so he could conquer the human realm. The Legend of Korra introduces the first antagonist, Amon, as a man who wants to get rid of the discrimination of non-benders against benders. This makes him hate the protagonist Korra, as she is the Avatar, master of all four elements, who in turn unknowingly propagates this discrimination. Throughout the season, it makes the viewer question, is Amon really a bad person? And is Korra, the person who we're meant to root for, part of the problem? After all, she does make some brazen remarks against those who can't bend an element. But it doesn't matter because for some reason Amon decides to start arresting uninvolved citizens and bombing Republic City filled with said uninvolved citizens. What these three pieces of media do is introduce a fascinating moral dilemma that makes the viewer question who to root for. It can make for amazing and long-lasting discussions among the fan base. But instead, since they want you to only root for the protagonist, they either sweep the moral dilemma under the rug by pointing out a bigger bad who is cartoonishly evil. I mean, Black Clover literally brings in the devil. Or they character assassinate the antagonist by all of a sudden changing their methods to make them a mustache twirling villain. Even before he becomes a mustache twirling villain, Amon's points weren't all that good. He wanted to fully take away bending so that everyone is equal. But in the world of Avatar, with how interconnected bending can be to a person, that's like if benders had three arms and non-benders had two. Amon's solution is to then cut off everyone's third arm because some people only exist with the two. It's not okay to say that Amon was fully right in his methods, but it's not okay to say that he was fully wrong either. Amon's solution to discrimination was flawed, for sure. He had good and bad points before he decided to establish a regime over a vendetta. Because of that, Korra could have fully deconstructed and dismantled his points, but it feels like they, for whatever reason, couldn't write that. They made him cartoonishly evil so that the viewer didn't need to see that deconstruction. Rather, by making him attack innocents, anyone would immediately know he's evil. Amon first seems to want equality, and when the twist gets revealed that he isn't even a non-bender, but a water bender, and a strong one at that, it then becomes a question of what his actual motivation is. Is it that he simply wants power and is using the manpower of the oppressed to obtain it? Or is he actually fighting for the oppressed non-benders? After all, because of his bending talent, he was abused by his father, so he experienced firsthand how evil bending can be. But why do I, the viewer, have to assume what the motivation of the main antagonist is? The twist that Amon isn't who he says he is sounds good on paper, but what it does is now get rid of his motivation. And since the show didn't give him a new one, the season ends with an antagonist who is trying to do what exactly? The Legend of Korra as a whole has this issue in every season of introducing a good concept with its antagonist before relying on cartoonishly evil methods. Aside from season 3, of course. They can never make me hate you, the Red Lotus. But I just wanted to focus on season 1, or else this would just be a Korra video, and that's boring. People who complain about Claudia bring up how she had no setup or no character at all. She came in to take the spotlight away from Madara, an antagonist who was set up and even foreshadowed since the start of Naruto. And she ruined the story because of that. But I've seen no one complain about how she ruined the story in this aspect. With Madara's goal against Naruto, Madara wanted to create a world without war and tragedy. He can't understand why people would be against that idea. But Naruto is the perfect foil to Madara's plans and ideals. Naruto was raised in a village with no parents and was shunned or bullied by everyone for being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Despite that, Naruto has goals and dreams. He was able to persevere through the hardships he had, making friends, and finally being accepted by the village who once hated him. He is the peak example of finding true happiness in a world of hatred. So to Naruto, how can there be happiness in a world where everything is given to you, especially if it isn't real? The blueprints for Madara's deconstruction and dismantling were right there. Yet instead of deconstruction, they decided to construct Kaguya, a character so bland even her skin blends into the page. Kaguya simply wanted to take the entire planet's chakra, and the infinite Tsukuyomi is a way that they get distracted while this happens. How exhilarating. People bring up the setup of Kaguya as if Kaguya having any foreshadowing would have saved it. Something being foreshadowed doesn't make it automatically good. What you're setting up still has to be good, or it just means that you wasted years setting up garbage. Take Zadri for instance. He didn't have as much, but the fact that he had any setup at all would make him better than Kaguya to some people. But what Zadri does is get rid of the question of if there is good or bad in this conflict between humans and elves. Before Zadri, this was a great example of actual war. In war, there is no true good or bad. There's just tragedy. But with Zadrid, it makes it all feel pointless. Saying that it was Zadrid who heightened the fear that humans had to attack the elves, or it was Zadrid who heightened the hatred for the elves to want revenge makes it feel, well, for lack of a better word, stupid. It makes it feel stupid. You're telling me that if Zadrid didn't heighten the anger that the elves had, that they wouldn't attack the humans? If my people were mostly killed and I barely survived with others, I don't need a devil in my ear to anger me. I'd be angry enough to want revenge without extra help. The introduction of Zadrid is different from Kaguya, as with Naruto, I already explained how the blueprints to deconstruct Madara were right there with Naruto. But in Black Clover, what ending would have taken place if Zadrid didn't show up? Because Asta is the protagonist in the story, his side would have won this conflict, or else everyone we've grown attached to would die at the hands of the elves. But Asta wins, and then what? As good as Asta is at inspiring people to change, these people were forced to change because of humans. They'd always be living in fear as long as humans were still alive. How can you conclude this war in a satisfying manner? This is an example different from the other two, so where I think the writer wrote himself into a corner. Maybe there is a satisfying resolution without Zenraid that I'm just not thinking of, but this moral dilemma was so gray that there was no way out of it without some black in the gray, like an outright evil character, so that the white can shine. There was no way to completely dismantle either side because both sides are understandable and can be justified to an extent more than Naruto or Korra. Even after Zadri gets revealed as the big bad and he gets slain, the elves are still wary of humans and decide to seclude themselves. Rightfully so. I believe this is why I've seen less people criticize Zadrid than Kaguya, even though on a basic level, they add the same thing to the story. Even though I despise his inclusion in the story, it was the only way to keep the series in Shonen Jump, or else instead of being subtle, it might have just gone straight into over politics. And that's really it. At the end of the day, Black Clover and Naruto were both in Shonen Jump, a magazine made for young teenage boys. The Legend of Korra was on Nickelodeon, a network for kids. As amazing as some writing pieces are while being made for kids, the ideas that they introduce can be that complicated, as some kids might not even register the basic idea that the protagonist is the bad guy, or that there is no good or bad guy in the story. Everyone is just awful. This of course isn't 100% true, as Shonen Jump themselves have Death Note under their belt, but the difference is that Death Note came out the gate being morally complex with its very concept, while Black Clover and Naruto didn't. They can try to introduce more complexity, but the fans that they hooked didn't get hooked by questioning who was right or wrong. They got hooked by a story inspiring you to pursue your dreams no matter what. And from my anecdotal experience, I watched Death Note as a little kid and didn't register light was supposed to be evil until I entered middle school. Overall, don't introduce things to something that you're writing, such as a moral dilemma, if you aren't going to see it through. It ruins any satisfaction that the ending of the story or that story arc will bring if you decide to ignore a key aspect that you brought to the story. If you're not an adept enough writer for such a dilemma, then it might be best to avoid it until you do become good enough to handle it. So yeah, if you want a piece of media that handles the dilemma between Madara and Naruto better, then play Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 Royal handles this dilemma better just by the fact that it's a video game, and lets you, the player, decide to either be Madara or Naruto in the playthrough. Both decisions feel as satisfying as you think choosing reality over dream, or vice versa. If you want a piece of media that handles the greatness of war better than Black Clover, there is Bleach. If you think there's any good or bad side in Bleach, you fell for the Shinigami propaganda. And if you want a piece of media that handles the idea of discrimination and privilege better than Korra's first season, well, there are a lot, like One Piece. But if you guys watching have any other pieces of media that tackles these dilemmas, put it in the comments. I do want some recommendations. Thanks for allowing me to take up your time, and have a good rest of your day.